You're listening to the Betoota Advocate's weekly news wrap on Desert Rock FM 96.5. Welcome back to the weekly Betoota Advocate News Bulletin. You're joined by myself, Clancy Overell, editor of the Betoota Advocate, joined, of course, as usual, by Errol Park, editor-at-large. How are you, Errol?
Good, mate. Good to be back after my brush with Delta. I think if it's to be avoided, especially up here in Queensland, we aren't used to having this type of vile sickness come up into our state, so... Look, if you're listening to this and you're one of those bug chasers going out trying to catch this bloody virus, don't. You've got rocks in your head. It'll fucking near kill you. It fucking near turned me in.
You did get the Delta, though. You didn't even get the...
smell. I couldn't go downstairs and pick up the fucking mail from the ground floor without getting out of breath.
Well, you know, the good thing is you got Delta and not Omicron, which means you are now super indestructible, super immunised. What about you, Wendell?
Yeah, last man standing, touch wood, still seem to be going okay. Not as rattled as some others around the Channel country, but I'm glad you probably believe in the virus now, Errol, now that you've got it.
Well, you know, it was touch and go there for a little bit. I mean, you know, I did have my vaxes, but I was hanging on to the doona and eating codrils like they were Tic Tacs, mate. It was... Especially last Tuesday, mate. I reckon that I was having conversations with Jesus Christ at the foot of my bed. I'll tell you what, he was standing right there. You know, I was talking to him face to face like I am you now.
You sure that wasn't your housemate, Jose?
It might have been, but he was talking a lot of sense.
Jesus.
How are you going, Clancy? You all right?
Yeah, I'm all good, mate. What's in the news?
Well, the government has revealed plans to solve these big supply chain issues by creating a 4-month backlog for forklift certifiers.
Yes, this comes, of course, as Prime Minister Scotty from Marketing unveiled his well-thought-out plan earlier in the week, which was to convince the state governments to allow children to drive forklifts to, of course, fill the void in the labour workforce, which is... caused quite a dent to our supply chains as more and more factory workers, warehouse workers and logistics workers go down with this fucking virus that Errol was talking about.
Tell you what though, this story, you know, this whole thing about Scott Morrison saying children should be driving forklifts, I mean, the chortling from the lefties was deafening, Wendell. I mean, he's not talking about children, he's talking about fucking 16-year-olds who, with a pair of L plates, can drive a fucking 3.5-ton truck down the fucking road.
Exactly. You throw Jado the keys to a Lolux.
It's just a fucking forklift in a dog food factory. I mean, what's the big deal?
Well, the big deal here is, Errol, as we pointed out, is that he didn't seem to have any plans to certify this new wave of Australians.
Mate, it's common sense government. He turns to his counterpart and says, let this happen. And they're just like, oh, children driving forklifts, look at this stupid man. Oh.
Yes, but the point is there was no way to certify these men. It would have created a 4-month backlog.
Just let them drive.
Yeah, but they're not driving anything.
Well, that was where
months.
You just give them an induction. Takes fucking 5 minutes. It's back, forward, up, down, left, right.
Have you driven a forklift, Errol?
Yes.
It's responsible for 1 in 6 workplace deaths in this country. The unions were okay with 16-year-olds driving forklifts, but they were not okay with removing the induction process, which is what would have had to have happened if we were to open the gates on, an entire generation of Australian blue-collar workers.
Well, everyone should just stop driving then if it's so unsafe.
You been to the fruit markets lately, mate? One of those old fucking banana growers nearly took off my wife's fucking leg yesterday.
All right, I think that's a good point to leave that story. Now, over in our Golden West, we've got a headline which reads like this. Later losers, says detach Western Australia as they sail off into the sunset.
Well, I say good on them. You know, they've pushed back their reopening now. It was going to open on the 5th of February. Then now it's just not going to open. Which, you know, you could see from a mile away. I mean, this was like a road train going down a Venetian canal. You know, it was unavoidable.
And you talked about chortling in that last story. The East was chortling when Mark McGowan said he wasn't opening till February. He was holding out. Everyone was saying, oh, look how backwards they are. And it's turned out all right for them.
Though. If you are a West Australian and you want to go home, you can go home. It's just, there's not letting the rat people of Sydney and Melbourne over to his...
And South Australia
over to
and the Northern Territory and Tasmania.
I mean, it's common sense. I mean, that state, for some Christ unknown reason, still hasn't been properly vaccinated. So look, it's cause and effect.
Secession is in the wind again. And I think McGowan knows that there is a sentiment there that exists. We all thought that he was actually on a tightrope and he was struggling to walk himself off with these borders, but he's just come out today and said, fuck the lot of yous, I'm never opening.
Heading to one of the epicenters of this virus, the Northern Rivers of New South Wales. The headline on this story is about an unvaccinated Earth child being intubated in the car park of the Lismore Hospital as the sun enters Aquarius. You wrote this one, Errol. Talk us through it.
Yes, mate. This poor young lady, it wasn't, because it's more COVID safe to intubate people in car parks. It's because the hospital in Lismore, mate, up in the northern Shivers part of New South Wales. Look, it's just completely overrun at the moment with unvaccinated COVID patients, to the point where there's just people, the entire health system up there is on the brink of collapse, and there's people like this person from this story which are just contributing to it, and it's a terrible turn of events that's happening there. But the sun is coming into Aquarius this week, so hopefully there are some positive things on the horizon for this.
So that means good things, does it?
Apparently, yes.
Apparently directly affects your health, and the, I guess, astrology of it all, I'm led to believe through this friend of my aunt's, it actually is better for your lungs if you are dying of a respiratory illness. The sun entering Aquarius is good news, if anything.
So that means on the way home I'd be able to, put left corner of the cruiser out onto the shoulder of the road and kind of bounce one of these.
It depends what your moon is.
These hippies on a push bike off out into the table drain, and while he's there in the mud having a ride around, I'd say, no worries, mate. The Aquarius sun's going to mend your fucking hip.
Well, it depends what their moon is. That's what will decide whether or not they survive your cruiser clipping them on a shoulder of the Birdsville Development Road at 130 kilometres an hour. It's hard to know.
All very complicated. Hopefully it spells the end of Omicron anyway. Sports news to round us out now. Novak Djokovic has returned to Australian shores with a fedora and electric guitar as he seeks to get an ambitious new Hillsong exemption.
Yes, after trying every other avenue that there was, a fortnight of injunctions and appeals, Novak Djokovic, the crown prince of Serbia, has been booted out of the country in an overhanded, very, very public example of political grandstanding that was supposed to distract us from the RAT shortage, and it certainly did. Of course, Djokovic doesn't poll very well with Australians. In fact, he polls worse with Australians than most politicians do, which is why I guess that was an easy scalp for our government. He wasn't clear on his documents, apparently, about whether or not he had been vaccinated, or whether or not he had the required exemptions to not be vaccinated, and he was deported by our government. Of course, there was one more option, and I'm not sure how it went for him, but he did return 24 hours later, wearing, as you said before, Wendell, a fedora and carrying an electric guitar, claiming that he had converted to the Hillsong brand of the Pentecostal church, because as we know, there are different rules for Hillsong, as exemplified by the 2022 Wildfire Youth Festival in Newcastle in that same week.
Well, he has been ordered to pay costs, and the government is willing to take a 16-minute guitar solo at the next Hillsong conference. So I guess that Novak has a lot of practice to do with his guitar. I don't know if he's very good at it. I don't think that Serbia is known for its rock and roll music, Wendell.
No, I don't think so, but he's got a strong work ethic. I'm sure he can pick it up.
So they've said he's deported for now. He's banned for 3 years, but they will reconsider that if he can deliver them a 16-minute face-melting electric guitar solo in time for their next conference at All Phones Arena. Which I believe is later in the year. They'll fly him in for that with Justin Bieber as well. If Brian Houston believes in his heart that Djokovic believes, then he will tell the Morrison government, both Scott Morrison and the Hillsong loyalist immigration minister Alex Hawke, to let Novak Djokovic back to play tennis again next Australian Open.
And I've also heard that if he learns to speak in tongues, if he learns the language of tongues, which I believe is quite similar to modern Greek, he'll be allowed in on a special visa as well.
Well, lucky that the Serbs are such good friends with the Greeks. He might be able to pick that one up pretty easily from some of his neighbours.
Well, at least it's not Bosnian, Clancy. So I guess we'll just leave it there.
Yeah, I think we should
not
stray any further into that. We'll leave it there. We'll wrap up this weekly bulletin on that note. We hope you have a good weekend, and we'll talk to you soon.
Bliet.